Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let me ask you something. What if the biggest wars of the last 100 years, World War I, World War II, the Cold War, what if they weren't just a series of separate, tragic accidents? What if they were all connected, part of a single, continuous struggle for global dominance, all centered on one thing: oil? That is the absolutely provocative argument from F. William Engdahl's book, A Century of War. And Engdahl isn't just some random guy. He spent decades deep in the world of global energy politics. And in this book, he lays out a case that, honestly, it might just challenge everything you think you know about modern history. So let's just dive right in. The book kicks off with this massive claim. Forget what you learned in history class about isolated conflicts. Engdahl says, nope. He argues there's a single, common thread, a century-long grand strategy for global control that connects everything. And that strategy began with control of trade, but then it made a decisive pivot to controlling the world's oil. All right, to really get where he's coming from, we've got to go back, way back. We're talking about the 19th century, right after the Napoleonic Wars. This is where Engdahl says the seeds of this whole strategy were planted, with the rise of the British Empire's total global dominance. According to the book, British power back then rested on what you could call a three-legged stool. First, you've got the Royal Navy, the undisputed king of the seas. That meant British ships got a free pass on insurance while everyone else had to pay up to London. Second, they dominated global trade. And third, they controlled the world's money from the City of London. Put it all together, Britain wasn't just a player in the global economy, it was the referee, making the rules and enforcing them. But, no empire lasts forever, right? Things were about to get very, very interesting. Because by the late 1800s, a new kid showed up on the block, a challenger that Engdahl says threatened the entire foundation of British power, a rapidly industrializing Germany. And when we say rapidly, we are not kidding. I mean, just look at this. The sheer speed of Germany's industrial revolution was staggering. Its steel output exploded by over 1,000% in just 20 years. This wasn't a country playing catch-up. This was a fundamental shift in global industrial power, a real threat. And Engdahl points to this project, the Berlin-Baghdad Railway, as the ultimate strategic threat. Think about it. Britain's entire empire was built on controlling the seas. This railway was a land-based economic superhighway straight to the Persian Gulf, completely bypassing Britain's naval power. It was an economic dagger aimed right at the heart of London's dominance. And this quote is just incredible. It perfectly captures how London was thinking at the time. You see, to them, Serbia wasn't just some small Balkan country. It was the gate of the East. It was the cork in the bottle. And from the British perspective, that gate had to be kept shut, and Germany had to be kept out. So you've got this huge geopolitical chess match playing out, but right in the middle of it, the game itself was about to change. A brand new piece was about to be put on the board, a strategic prize that would rewrite all the rules of global power: petroleum. According to the book, one man, British Admiral Jackie Fisher, saw the future, and it was black gold. An oil-powered navy was just better in every single way. It was faster, it was stealthier, no giant smoke plumes giving away your position, and it could go way, way farther. Any fleet that switched to oil would instantly make every coal-powered navy on the planet completely obsolete. But here's the kicker for Britain. It had tons of coal, but not a single drop of oil. And so began, as Engdahl describes it, a desperate strategic scramble to control the world's oil reserves, especially in Persia, what we now call Iran. And get this, they actually pulled it off. By the 1920s, they had locked down control of about 3/4 of the world's known future supply. So this is where Engdahl connects all the dots for the first part of the century. He draws a straight, brutal line from Germany's industrial rise to the threat of that railway, to Britain's desperate need for oil, right to the outbreak of World War I. He argues the Great War wasn't an accident. It was a calculated, necessary move by the Anglo-American powers to crush Germany and secure their oil field dominance for the next century. Okay, let's fast forward now. We're past 2 world wars. And the center of global power has clearly shifted from London to Washington, D.C. But according to Engdahl, the name on the door changed, but the game stayed exactly the same: the relentless struggle to control oil. He says the old playbook was dusted off for another world-changing event that he is absolutely convinced was no accident. Now, this is one of the book's most explosive arguments. Engdahl lays out this timeline, and he claims the 1973 oil crisis wasn't a surprise. He says it was a manufactured shock, planned months in advance by the world's financial and political elites. A deliberate strategy to massively hike oil prices and reshape the entire global financial system to favor the US dollar and the big banks in London and New York. And this price shock created an incredibly powerful new system he calls petrodollar recycling. It's kind of a brilliant circular trap. Here's how it worked. All that new oil money, those petrodollars, didn't just stay in the Middle East. It was funneled right back into the big New York and London banks. And what did those banks do? They loaned that exact same money at high interest back to the developing world so they could afford to buy the now insanely expensive oil. It was a global debt machine. So, you've built this incredible system of financial control. The question is, how do you maintain it? How do you keep everyone in line? Well, the book points to a strategy with a pretty chilling name. I mean, wow. Just take a second to read that quote. Controlled disintegration. Engdahl points to this as a smoking gun pulled from a report by the incredibly influential Council on Foreign Relations. He presents it as proof of a conscious plan not to grow the world economy, but to actually manage its decay in order to maintain control. And the book then lays out the toolbox they used to enforce this order. Any nation that tried to get off the treadmill, maybe by developing its own independent energy source like nuclear power, would get hit with a 1-2 punch. First came the financial pressure from groups like the IMF, and if that didn't work, well, political destabilization often followed. The goal was always the same: bring them back into the oil-based dollar system. So, after all that, what's the big takeaway? What's the bottom line from Engdahl's work? It really comes down to this one single powerful idea: that there is an unbroken thread, a continuous Anglo-American strategy to control the world's vital resources, especially oil, and that this strategy has been the hidden engine driving the world's biggest wars and economic crises for more than a century. So, we've laid out the core arguments from F. William Engdahl's controversial book, and it really leaves us with one massive question, the same question that sits at the very heart of his work. Do you think history is really just one thing after another, a series of chaotic accidents? Or is it possible there's a hidden grand strategy connecting the dots? Something to think about.